Welcome to the Brain Picker Pro Show, live from Lake Wiley, South Carolina, and all the way up in the Northeast in Boston. My good friend, and I'm actually a student of his, Charles
Yeah.
Dobens. What's going on, buddy?
How are you, Larry? Good to see you again.
Man, I am doing great. I am doing great. For those of you who may not know who this guy is, I mean, he's a mover and a shaker. He's a successful attorney. He is a consultant. He consults people in multifamily. He's owned over $20 million in multifamily himself and worked with students for over $3 billion with a B in multifamily transactions. And Charles, I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm actually a student as well. I bought some of your programs.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. That's such a vote of confidence. I love that.
That's awesome. That is
Yeah,
awesome.
that's cool.
Yeah, I was going to come to your Charlotte event that you had scheduled,
Yeah.
and then I
We
ended
had
up
to,
just
we had to reschedule it.
buying the videos for that instead.
Yeah, and I got, I'm speaking all over the country, so, just check my schedule and I'll be back there again.
That's awesome.
So I-
That is
yeah,
really good.
the video that you bought happened to be a Charlotte event from the year before that I did in Charlotte. So,
Right.
yeah, I like Charlotte. Charlotte's a good place for multifamily, too.
It is a good place. It really is, and that's something that I'm expanding into. I've done very, very small, tiny amount, but I want to get into the bigger deals, the 100-unit type deals.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So why don't you start out and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am a real estate investor, and I'm also an attorney. And the nice thing is that what happened was I started off in the insurance business. I owned an insurance firm. I was a lawyer, and I said, listen, I cannot stand the insurance business. I have to get out of it. It's going to put me in an early grave. I mean, as I say, if ever you have a child that comes to you and says, hey, Mom, Dad, I want to be an insurance agent, there is something wrong with that child. There's something very, very wrong. It's like, when did they decide to give up on life? So I told my wife, I said, listen, I can't do this anymore. I want to do something different. She said, what do you want to do? I said, I've always wanted to own apartments. She said, then that's what we're going to do. And so I sold the insurance business, and we started buying apartments, and we built up, a nice portfolio. And then, just like everybody else, the market crashed. And what happened with me was, we lost some of the properties, we kept some of the properties, but I had made such good friends with other multifamily investors
Right.
that they were going through the same problems I was.
Right.
And they came to me and said, hey, can you represent me as an attorney? You know how this goes and what to do. And I thought, sure, I can, definitely, represent you and see if I can help you out of the situation. But, the problem was that at that stage of the game, there wasn't much I could do for them. I mean,
Right.
I just could hold their hand through the process and tell them there's going to be life at the other end. So what I realized was, as I was helping these people look at their deals, I thought to myself, why did you ever buy this property? This is
Right.
this is not a good deal. I mean,
Right.
there's a reason why it's going back to the bank. You should never have bought it, even in a good period.
They should have called
And
you
I can't-
before they bought it.
Exactly. Well, that's
Right.
I hate hearing that. You not
Right.
believe how many times I hear people say that
Right.
to me, and I dread those words. And so I said I decided I can do more help to these people if I teach them beforehand how to buy the property the right way,
Right.
so they don't get themselves into trouble. And that's how my whole consulting program came about. And every lawyer that I talk to now is so green with envy of my business because I have all of these clients all over the country. I technically, Larry, you're going to laugh at this, but they can call me anytime and I answer my phones. My students have direct access to me, but technically I only work Monday nights from 7 to 8 p.m. on my kickoff call. That's the only time I'm scheduled to do anything. And so all my lawyer friends are like, how do I get that gig and not have to practice law? And that's what I do. So it's a lot of fun. I love it. I love it.
That is awesome, man. That's really good, and you're really good at what you do. You got
Yeah.
a huge following. I've watched many of your videos, bought your videos, and you got some really unique things. And one of the things that you really kind of focus on for your students in helping them is overcoming the 4 roadblocks, right?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Tell
And
us
what
about that.
happened was, as I'm going through this process, I'm coming to the realization, obviously, owning a business and a successful business is all about building systems. And to build a system, you have to identify those repeat items that happen every single time.
Right.
And as I was going through all these transactions for my students, I came to the realization that, boy, we're hitting all the same roadblocks every single time. If we can just come up with some way to just overcome those problems, we can solve it. And so I've identified 4 roadblocks that people have. The first one is a proof of funds letter. Now, unfortunately I had a great blog post with a video on proof of funds letter. I think proof of funds letters are the biggest waste of time. All it is a way for the broker to try to prove his worth to the seller.
Right.
Like trying to weed out people. But I can get you a proof of funds letter in no time flat if you ever needed one.
Right.
But I also try to teach you, like, this is how you need to get around that so you don't need that proof of funds letter anymore. Because what was happening, and this killed me, people would become students of mine, would become clients of mine, and they would start going through the process. And then what happened was a broker would ask them for a proof of funds letter, and their career would be over.
And they
How
would freak
can I
out.
ever overcome that?
Right.
I mean, it's just a huge roadblock.
Right.
There goes my career. So I said, so let me ask you this. When you're 65 years old and you're sitting there waiting for the mailman to deliver your Social Security check, are you going to be sitting around telling everybody that you could have been a success in multifamily if only that broker had not asked for a proof of funds letter? Is that really going to be the thing that holds you back? So that's the first one. I can take care of that for my students. That just rolls right over. And more importantly, and this is the key thing, is it always seemed to me that the inexperienced and the novice investors were always the ones getting asked for the proof of funds letter.
Right.
The guy that knows what he's doing and knows how to talk his way out of a traffic ticket, they never get asked for a proof of funds letter.
Right.
So it's also a part of training the people as to how to deal with brokers and how to speak to brokers the right way.
Right. It's
So-
because they can smell a newbie. They can tell they don't know what they're doing. But if you
Yeah.
learn the lingo and all that good stuff, then, they don't even ask for that. They know you know what you're doing.
Exactly. And, of course. I mean, if you're in the business, a broker should be embarrassed to ask you for a proof of funds letter.
You should make them feel that way anyway.
It's like, well, what did you say to the broker that made him ask for a proof of funds letter? Well, I told him this was my first deal and I don't have any money. Like, okay, well, I can understand that. Yeah, I can understand why you did that. That makes sense.
I don't have any money, credit, or experience.
Exactly. And I come back. I said, listen, from now on, you only tell that to me. You don't tell that to anybody else. All right. Nobody else needs to know that.
Right.
So,
It's like It's like the newbie wholesalers trying to tell a broker that they're going to wholesale this property before they close on it.
It's like, I'm sure the broker loves to hear that.
Exactly.
Wow, what a great idea. What a great idea.
I love
Why
it.
did I think of that?
So what's the second thing?
Oh, the second thing is earnest money. Now, the type of people that I tend to come look for me and find me and use my services have been in the single family business.
Right.
They've been doing it for years, and they're looking now to get into the bigger side so they can start getting cash flow, because they know that the single family business, you're only as good as your last sale, just like the insurance business. So what they would do is, to get a deal in a contract, sometimes they would write a check for $100 or a check for $1,000, and the realtor would hold on to it and wouldn't even cash it.
Right.
And that goes on all the time in the residential world, but you don't do that in the multifamily world.
No.
It's a totally different. Typically, you got to put down 1% of the purchase price as earnest money. And if you're making a bid on a $5 million property, you better be able to write a check for $50,000.
Right.
Well, there's your other roadblock. People say, "Oh my gosh, I can't overcome that. What do I do?" I said, listen, when I was buying all my properties, I was short on cash at times too, but I didn't want to let these deals go by, so I needed to come up with a way that I could stroke a check for the earnest money deposit and make it happen. So I went down to meet a friend of mine, and I wanted him to invest in one of my deals, and he tells me, "No, I just sold some stuff, and I got about $1 million liquid." And I'm like, "Oh baby, this he's going to be a great investor in my product." And so he says, I said, "Well, I'm working on this property. We need to raise about $500,000. If you'd like to come in, that would be fantastic." And he says, "Nah, I'm not really looking to tie up my money for a long period of time. I'm looking for 90-day deals." I'm like, okay, well, that kind of just kills anything I have. And then I went back to my office and I started thinking to myself, wait a minute, he's got the cash, I have the need. How can we marry the two so that we can get that money and put it to use?
Right.
And what essentially I came up with was what I call, it's the Earnest Money Deposit Program. But what it really is, it's like hard money lending for earnest money.
Right.
So the hard money lenders secure their investment with a hard asset, with the real estate in a first position.
Right.
With earnest money, you don't have that. There's nothing to secure it with. So it's really all based upon contracts. And as an attorney, I can work the contracts. I draft all the contracts. I hold the escrow money, and I monitor it so that what I end up doing is I match you up with an earnest money deposit partner who I have in my stable of clients, and I put the two of you together, and you two become partners through the first couple portions of the transaction. Mm-hmm. And at some point, you're going to have to replace that money or get out of the deal, which is what you're going to have to do anyway. So that's the Earnest Money Deposit Program allows all of my students to know they can just make offers on properties and we'll have the earnest money deposit for them. And it really removes a huge roadblock for investors. And the other thing, Larry, and you'll know this, it gives them absolute confidence that they can just go out there and make offers.
Right,
right. Because as I always say, if you're not making offers, this is nothing more than a very expensive hobby.
So at some point, they're either going to get out of the deal by turning that deal over to somebody else that does have the capability to close, and it's almost like they're wholesaling the deal, for lack of a better term. Is that correct?
That is one of the options that they have. They can wholesale it. They can just walk away from the deal. Or they can replace it with, like I got a guy right now. We're replacing $25,000 that I've given him, and he's replacing with his with a family member's 401k money.
Right.
And now he's in the deal because he likes this deal. He wants it to go forward. Boom, he's in. And he was able to get the deal into contract 2 months ago because I gave him the $25,000.
And you've basically looked at the deal and said, yes, we should move forward with it.
No, I don't do any of that.
You don't do any of that.
I look over his shoulder to make sure he's analyzing the deal correctly and make sure that he's going through the due diligence correctly. Right. I am with my students every step of the way.
Right.
But ultimately it's their decision. And, I always have to play Switzerland in these deals. I mean, It's a really bad deal. I'll tell you, man, stay away from this deal.
Right.
But yeah.
I'm with you. That's good.
Yeah.
Now, and you as an attorney, do you actually handle the closings or are you just holding the EMD?
No, I act as the escrow agent in those transactions. So I actually appear in the purchase and sale agreement as the escrow agent. And, we use my program's purchase and sale agreement, which is what I've drafted over years of doing deals. And it's a purchase and sale agreement that is designed to protect the buyer. Uh-huh. So they've got those protections every step of the way. But I never act as a lawyer. I always tell my students, I am a lawyer. I am not your lawyer. You're going to hire a lawyer. Right. So I provide all the contracts. We write up the contracts based upon the offers and what have you. And then I say, now you have to give it to your local counsel to have it blessed, because it's amazing the stuff. And I'm going to tell you one in a moment. It's amazing the differences in state law that to make a real estate contract valid. Like, for instance, 12 states in the country have an independent consideration clause, which requires, I put down $50,000. Well, if you get all $50,000 back, the state courts say that's not a valid contract because you never had anything to lose. So what those states do is they put a clause in the purchase and sale agreement called independent consideration. So instead of putting up $50,000, you put up $50,100. And in the event that you cancel a contract, you only get $50,000 back. You lose $100. And 12 states in the country have that wording, and that they require that wording for a real estate contract. So I can't know all the state laws. That's why you have to have local counsel in your area. And get a load of this one, Larry. You're gonna flip at this one. I had a student in Pennsylvania. Have you heard about this one in Pennsylvania? The transaction tax? Oh, you're gonna love this. So the tax board in Pennsylvania has come up with a new rule that says if you put a real estate contract in place in your own name, Larry Goins, and you decide you're going to buy this property, and just before you close, you create a single purpose entity and you transfer you assign the contract to the single purpose entity, and then the single purpose entity buys the property the next day.
Right.
Pennsylvania says that's 2 transactions and you get taxed twice on that.
Wow. Even though it's a lateral move.
Even though it's your own company, you're the only one involved. That's what they came up with. So there has to be wording within the purchase and sale agreement to protect the buyer for that. And so we have special wording for that. It's crazy. You have to have local counsel always looking over your shoulder.
Wow, that's crazy. That is crazy.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about it. And I know we really haven't got into any details, but I want to let everybody know what size of deals, like number of units and purchase price and stuff are we talking? Well, you're not talking about duplexes and quads here. We're talking about bigger projects.
Right. We're talking from 5 units on up.
Right.
Okay. So that is, and when I come out to speak, my class is called How to Own 1,000 Apartments in 5 years. That is what I train on. That's what I rope everybody in on.
Right.
And I tell them it's a lot easier than you think. All you have to do is start with 20 units in the first year. Can you do 20 units? If you can do 20 units in 1 year, you can do 1,000 in 5.
Right.
And it's just all exponential. Listen, I've done it and it works. So the 5 units and up is considered commercial. Anything below that's residential.
Right.
So
Right.
5 units on up is where we start to work. But I am always, these guys who say go big or go home. Okay, fine. Yeah, that's great. But the whole point here is for you to get to 1,000 units, you're not going to do it in a day. You're going to build a business that can support that type of infrastructure.
Sure.
And so you have to do it right the right way. If you grow too fast, you're just going to implode. You're going to hurt yourself. I want you to build the business the right way so that in 5 years, you got a phenomenal business that's going to take care of you for the rest of your life. And that's how I teach my students. So, I tell the story about one of my students who, I kept telling him, okay, he's looking at 20, okay, he's looking at 100 units. And then he comes along and says, I just got these 3 properties under contract. I said, oh, great. He says, what's the purchase price? He goes, well, it's going to total about $36 million. I'm like, really? Your first deal, right. You're going to do. He says, Charlie, I just found that it was easier to do the bigger deals than it was to do the smaller deals. And I figured I might as well just go for it. I said, okay, all right, fine. Let's go through this and make sure that we're doing everything right. And 90 days later, the guy owns 3 student housing complexes and for $36 million. Now, granted, I'm going to give the guy kudos. He was a CPA. He knows numbers. He's a very bright guy. So he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was getting himself into, and he's going to do very, very well with it. I don't recommend that you do that, but, there's always, some guy who doesn't listen to me. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. I love it. Go big or go home, right?
I know. Don't.
Now, most people aren't going to do that, but they can start with 20 units or 40 units or 60 or whatever.
Exactly. 4 5s, 5 4s, 2 10s. Get 20 in the first year. Learn the business. Understand how it goes. The first 2 deals are your hardest deals. After that, this business is just going to flow for you. People are going to be dropping deals on your desk because they know you're a performer. So it's just getting through those first 2 deals. And as I tell my students, I said, you're only going to need me for the first 2 transactions. After that, you're on your own, but we'll be friends, and you can call me anytime you need me. Right. So, yeah.
That's awesome. That is awesome. What is the third roadblock?
Okay, the third roadblock is one that I came up against early on, and I don't see anybody else talking about it, and it's a real issue, is that if you've never done a multifamily deal before, you're not going to qualify for a mortgage.
Right.
If you are out there making offers on $3 million properties, Fannie Mae is not going to give you a mortgage. They're going to say, well, you lack experience, you lack net worth, you lack liquidity. And so right away, geez, I wish I had known that before I started making all these offers on $3 million properties that I don't even qualify. So much for the property qualifying. Now they're asking me to qualify, and I don't qualify.
Right.
So I thought to myself, how can I solve this problem? And what they're asking for is what's called a KP, a key principal. And I thought to myself, you know what? I got tons of clients who would easily and do easily qualify for multifamily mortgages. And so I'm going to ask them to partner with my students to help them get across that finish line. So now I have students that will sign on the dotted line for you and with you, and they will, I think one guy, he takes 20% of what you own of the deal, and he will sign on the dotted line and get you across the finish line. And you know what happens after about 3 transactions? You become the KP.
Right.
So my students just continues to grow, and so I have several students that will qualify as key principals and will help my other students get across the finish line. And it all comes down to these guys. The KPs come to me and says, "Hey, one of your students contacted me. Should I do this deal?" And I said, "Yeah, this is a good student. You want to do this deal."
Right.
If someone who is not in my program tries to use my KP, they call me up and I said, "No, stay away from this guy. No, I don't want you getting your name in with that guy." So that's one of the other roadblock that we can overcome is getting over that hurdle. So.
Well, number one, you want to make sure that student has been trained correctly before you want that KP to get involved.
Exactly. And I know if they use my contracts, I know we're protected. I know where all the exit clauses are. I know how to get out of that deal if things start going south. One of my number one rule, and every one of my students knows this, my number one rule is to always remain in control of the deal. You've always got to remain in control of the deal. If the seller gets control, it's not a pleasant place to be. So I teach my students how to remain in control of the deal every step of the way.
That is great. That's really, really good. So what is the fourth roadblock?
Okay, so when I was first getting started in multifamily, the barrier to entry was the down payment. And we had to go out there and raise the down payment. We used friends and family. We did offerings, any way we could to raise the private money. Then what happened was one of my students was doing a deal, and he needed a lot of money. And he says, "Yeah, but my mortgage banker is going to bring me 95% of the deal." I said, "What are you talking about?" He says that certain lenders will raise not only get you a mortgage for the debt, but they'll also raise a portion of the equity. So in this particular case, he was getting a mortgage of 65% LTV, and then the mortgage banker had his own stable of investors, and they came into the deal for 30%. So he had 95% of the funds raised just by his lender.
Get out of here.
I'm not kidding you. He only had to come up with 5%. I said, wait a minute. And I know, here I am, the guru, and this guy's teaching me about something I've never even heard of before.
So you're like, I got to have that guy's name and number, right?
Exactly. I mean, like, any more people just like him? And it turns out there's a mortgage banker who's a client of mine in the program, and he calls me up and says, "Charlie, I do that all the time." I said, "Can you do that for my students?" He goes, "Absolutely." So we have the Equity Assist program, where if you come in, and you do a deal over $3 million, and you use my student as the banker, as the mortgager, then he will raise the up to 95% of the equity for you in the deal, and so you don't have to raise that whole big chunk anymore. And so that's what I did. And then what happened was, this is bad. You're gonna get a kick out of this one. The student who had to raise the 5% still couldn't raise that 5%.
Oh no!
And he was going to lose this deal,
right?
And he came to me and says, "Charlie, I need $250,000. Do you know anyone?" I said, "Listen, I don't know anyone, and I'm not going to ask anyone for you. But here's what I will do. I have a 10,000 person email database. You write up something, and I will blast it out to my list." But listen, I'm not here to raise you money. That's not my job. But I will help you if this helps. I will send out a blast email. I send out a blast email. He gets the $250,000 in no time flat. 2 other students come up to me and ask me for the same thing. Short money, $100,000, $150,000.
Right.
I said, "Okay, I'll do this because I take care of my clients as best I can. But this is no guarantee. So I
Right.
sent out the emails. Both of them got their deals funded. And so I thought to myself, listen, if I can do this for my students, I will do this for them. They can use my database, and I will help them raise private money. But that is not what my program is all about. So that's the fourth roadblock. Is I am here to help you. I've done it. I've done it so many times. I've done it right and I've done it wrong. And I'm there to protect you and help you every step of the way to get across that final, to the closing table. That's the goal. Get to the closing table.
You know what, Charles? That's huge for a student starting out. I mean, I know you don't want to work with a broke, unemployed, no credit, no job type person. That's not the kind of person that needs to be jumping in and buying 20 or 40 or 100 units. But if a person's a little short, but if they know what they're doing, if they're at least pretty sharp, and they've gone through your program, then man, that's huge. That is huge. You helping them out like that.
And the nicest thing, I have one student that put money into another student's deal, and I love it when the first student always says like, I put money in that guy's deal. It's the best investment I've made so far in multifamily. That guy's deal still spits off a lot of money every single month. I said, I love hearing that. So and I'll never forget. When that student bought the deal, he came into my program and he had checked out every other guru and said, okay, fine, I like you. I'm going to go with you. And so he signs up and within 3 weeks, he's got a deal under contract. And I look at it, I said, oh, please don't do this deal. I hate this deal. This deal is a dog. No. If I go through the due diligence process and I make these changes, I said, no. I'm telling you right now, let's save a whole lot of time and just kill this deal right now. No, we're going to go after it. The day before the money goes hard, he says, okay, all right, fine. Yeah, I'm going to kill this deal. And he kills the deal and gets his money off back, no problem. 3 weeks later, he's back on the contract. He sends over the property, and I look at it. I said, you're buying this property. This one is a great property. You want to own this property. This is exactly the type of property you want to own. And to this day, he keeps reminding me that whole story as to how the whole thing came about. And now he's on to his next deal. That was a 55-unit deal. Now he's on to his next deal. So it's a lot of fun. I just love helping out my students.
That's awesome, man. And that's what he pays you for, to help him keep from making mistakes.
How do you like it? The guy who's made every mistake in the book, looking over your shoulder, whenever you need him. And I don't do regularly scheduled coaching calls with my students. I would go out of my mind if I had to do that.
Right.
But every student has my cell phone. They can call me, they can text me, they can WhatsApp me. We have a big WhatsApp group among all the students. Right. And don't call me up and say, hey, what time tomorrow is a good time to speak to you? I said, anytime. Just call. If I can answer the phone, I will answer the phone. If I can't, I'll call you right back.
Yeah, because the only time you're busy is one night a week between 8 and 9, right?
That's right. I just told you the secret. Now you're going to tell everybody. You're absolutely right.
That's funny. I love it. You mentioned a minute ago about the guy called you up and canceled before the money went hard. Yeah. Explain that to the students so they understand what that means.
Okay, so when you go into a multifamily deal, you're going to have certain contingencies. The first contingency is what we call the inspection period, and that's where you're going to put the earnest money up, and then you're going to have a certain number of days where you can go take a look at the property and decide whether you want to proceed forward. Now, I have done a whole due diligence weekend course. That all of my students get this program that is top. It is the best training in multifamily due diligence out there. So all of my students know what they need to do to determine whether the property is a deal or not. And the way I write the purchase and sale contract is when we first make the offer, the last page of the offer lists everything that we are going to need from the seller in order to perform the due diligence. So in the very first communication that we send to the seller, we tell them what we want. And that all those documents get put into the purchase and sale agreement as well. So the seller, right from the beginning, knows if this guy's going to buy my property, I got to give him these documents. And then, and this has been learned the hard way, the way we write the purchase and sale agreement is we put the earnest money with the escrow agent 3 days after the effective date. Now, I didn't say execution date. I said the effective date. And the effective date is the date that the seller has given us all the documents on that page. If he never gives us all the documents, we're not going to write a check.
Right.
We're not going to put any money in the deal. And I have learned this the hard way. And one of it happened to be a situation that ended up in a lawsuit. This new student, he got a deal into contract, and then he called me, wanted to engage me. So I said, okay, fine. After the contract, he used somebody else's contract, and he goes into it. Now the seller was in bankruptcy, which is kind of a red flag. The guy goes out to the property to take a look at it. 20 units, 4 units they can't even get into. Guy doesn't have a key. Okay, drill it out. Well, we don't want to drill it out. Well, I need to see those units. Well, we'll show you later. Okay. Kept asking for the financial records. Yeah, I'll get those to you. We're on the 29th day of a 30-day window. And I'm telling the student, kill the deal right now. Kill the deal right now. Terminate the contract, keep your money in escrow, but and also the seller's attorney was holding the $10,000. Big mistake. Yeah. And so I said, kill the deal right now. No, the guy told me he'll get me the financial information. I said, he's never going to give it to you. He's never going to give it. He doesn't even have it. No, I'm going to get it. 3 days after the inspection, when we're into the second contingency period, which is a financing contingency, he finally says, you know what, this guy's not going to give me the documents. You were right. I should have terminated this. I'm going to terminate it now. He sends out a termination letter. The seller's attorney sends him back, says, you acted in bad faith during the financing contingency. We are going to take the $10,000 and file an interpleader with the Virginia, state court, and you guys are going to have a lawsuit to get your $10,000 back. Because he didn't listen to me and he waited 2 extra days. And I actually, because I love this guy's a really good guy, and I want to help him out in any way I can. I actually flew down to Washington and testified in that case for him.
Wow.
And he wins. Do you know, so he got his $10,000 back. Do you know how much his legal bill was?
15.
Yeah, pretty close. Yeah, exactly. It's like, why didn't you listen to me? So that's the whole point, is we never want to. We have these contingencies built into the contracts, so our money doesn't go hard until we are darn ready that we're ready to move forward. But that's what we mean by the money going hard. It gets put at risk, as I always say.
That's
and the
good.
way I teach my students is, whenever the money leaves your bank account and goes to someone else's, it's always at some degree of risk.
Right.
So
always.
Even if you're in the inspection period, you've got to understand you're under an obligation to do something. So that's what I always want to stress that point to my students.
And I got to mention this. I mean, there's a lot of now they're selling a lot of multifamily on auction sites like 10X. And now some of them look like pretty good deals, but the problem is, and you've mentioned contract multiple times, but when you're buying on auction, even if it's 50 or 100 units or 200 units, they want you to use their contract.
Yep.
So
exactly.
Do you recommend not buying at auction, or is there a way around that to get them to use your contract?
What you have to understand is that when you're using those types of sites, your due diligence period that, like I just described, the 30-day inspection period,
right.
You don't get that. That inspection period happens before you make the offer.
Right.
So they expect you to do all the due diligence before you make the offer, because you're not going to get a chance afterwards. And then you had better read their contract and understand how that contract works. And it is punitive. So you better understand that what happens to your money if you don't perform on those contracts. So remember, my number one rule, always remain in control of the deal. If you're using somebody else's contract, they're in control of the deal. So if you can live with that, go for it. If you don't feel comfortable, move on. Next.
Yeah, that's a really good point. They do seem to be like some pretty good deals out there on 10X and whatnot, but you've got to stay in control.
Yep. And the 10X, you look at it now, and they don't have many. Remember back in 2009, Larry?
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, they're starving to death today compared to what they were doing, in 2009. Exactly.
Man, this is really, really good stuff. I want to ask you a couple more questions, and then we're going to wrap it up because, man, this is good stuff. It's going long, but man, I love it. I love it. It's great. So what do you recommend your students do to find these types of deals that fit the criteria?
Okay, so when you come to my 1-day seminar, the first morning is all about how to find the deals. 90% of this business is sales and marketing, and it's all about finding that deal. Right. And these people are coming from the single family side, and they think it's going to be different. It isn't. It's all about hustling and putting the shoe leather out there and finding the deals, knocking on doors, looking everywhere. The problem that I see new students doing is everybody comes out of one of these weekend boot camps and they all go rush into LoopNet. And they all sign up on LoopNet. It's like LoopNet must know when one of these guys has a boot camp because their registration skyrockets. Right. And I say, listen, LoopNet is where deals go to die. If a broker's got a good deal, do you think he's going to put it out there on LoopNet? He's got a stable of investors, guys who've already bought from him, who are going to get a first crack at that property. And I always tell a story about a broker one time that I had a deal under contract with, and next thing I know, he's got a new deal up on LoopNet. I said, hey, why don't you let me take a look at that first? He goes, oh, you don't want that deal. I said, well, why didn't you even let me take a look? Ah, you don't want that deal. I said, why'd you put it up on LoopNet? He goes, let me explain to you how LoopNet works. We put a deal up on LoopNet. Within the first 3 days, we get 1,700 requests for additional information. And that's really easy to do. On LoopNet, you just click the red button and it sends an email to the broker. It says out of that 1,700, we may get about 20 to 25 follow-ups with legitimate questions about the material. Right. So out of that, we get maybe 5 offers. And then one person buys a property after we weed through those 5 offers. It goes 1,700 down to 1. I said, now the guy who bought the property thinks that he beat out 1,699 other investors. And the other 1,699 investors look at it and say, like, we took a look at this property and passed on it because it was a bad deal. One guy got it. So it depends upon which side of the looking glass you're in, as to say, hey, did this guy get the deal or did everybody avoid a bad deal? Right. And LoopNet, you got 5 million eyeballs looking at your property. It's not a deal. And so what I teach my students is all the places where you can find deals on the internet, right there sitting in your own home that nobody else is looking for, that you need to do to get out there and find it. And then I show them, I said, look, here's a property right here. Now let's go over to LoopNet, plug in the address, and see if it pops up. Oh, what do you know? It's not on LoopNet. But you have to know where to look to find those types of deals. That's how you're going to get into this business. That's
so important. That's very, very, very important because the first part of it is finding the right deal.
Yeah, exactly. And remember, you do your first deal the right way, you're in this business for the rest of your life. You do the first deal the wrong way, you'll never do another deal. So that first deal is crucial.
That's so important, which brings me to analyzing a deal.
Yeah.
So spend a couple minutes on talking about analyzing. When you see one, what do you need to do to determine if it's a deal or not?
Okay. The thing that you always want to get is what's called the trailing 12 financial statement, the T12. Yeah, the T12. It's an income and expense statement. And you want to see it for a 12-month window. Right. All right. As my mother used to say, you got to see the woman in all 4 seasons before you marry her. And so, you got to see the property in all 4 seasons to really know what's going on with it. The brokers don't like to give up that information. And a lot of times you get, rigmarole from them like, oh, well, once you get the property under contract, then we'll give you that information. Well, that's not really the way it goes. All we care about in this business is not the real estate. I'm sorry, you single family investors. I don't care about the property. I've been through 3,000 apartment units inspecting them. I never have to see another one. I know exactly what they look like. All I care about is the financial statement. We are not buying real estate. We are buying cash flow. The single family guys, you're buying real estate. I'm buying cash flow. And the property is nothing more than a factory that generates a product called a lease, and the value of the lease depends upon the value of the customer. So So that's how we value this property. So I want to see 12 months. I'd love to see a rent roll so I can match everything up. And then I can put all this information into my cash flow analyzer, which is a software program all my students get. That's how we communicate back and forth. And then we can determine and look at it and figure out whether it's a deal or not. And there are certain financial measurements that we want to make sure are in there, to protect ourselves. But I can tell you just by looking at the initial financials whether we've got a deal or not by knowing the expense ratios of the property and the cap rates of the property, all those types of things. And I teach that this is the most fun I have in my teaching is how to analyze a multifamily financial statement better than your accountant.
That's
and
awesome.
That's how I
love
teach
it.
it. Yeah.
Now, are you teaching your students to go out and buy a value add type property or just based on the current cash flow?
Oh, okay. Everybody's different. There's like, for instance, I buy a performing asset because I don't own a tool belt.
Right.
And my consulting practice, takes up a lot of my time. I love it. So I can't be out there, turning units.
Right.
Other people, that's all they do is buy non-performing assets and turn them around.
Right.
That's great. So it's really either story is a great story. It all depends upon what you as an investor want your business to look like. And the thing that we do, and this is so key, is when I look at a multifamily financial statement,
right,
I can tell you exactly what a day in the life of that little old lady who's been the property manager on that property for the last 20 years, I can tell you what a day in her life is like just by looking at the financial statements. And that's what we do is you have to tell me through the numbers what the narrative is.
Right.
And if you say, the rents are going to go up by this much in the next 2 years, I said, okay, build your model to look like that. Because if you don't build your model to show me what the potential is on that property, why would I invest in your property? It's not a good deal.
Right.
Oh, it's a great deal because the rents are going to go up by $100 a month. That type of thing. So it's really, as I teach my students, it's the numbers and it's the narrative. That's what I need to see.
That's good. Man, This is good stuff. This has been awesome, Charles. I appreciate this.
Always good talking with you, Larry.
That's really good. Fun. So how would somebody reach out to you if they wanted to follow you, come to one of your events or whatnot?
Yeah, just come to multifamilyinvestingacademy.com. Deb, my assistant, she posts everything up there, and you can see my schedule for where I'm going to be. I've got 2 more events when we're doing this, and then we're going to come up with another schedule. I love doing my one days. They are so much fun. I get to meet people, and it really is like a college classroom. I try to stay out of the hotels. I find amphitheaters where people can sit comfortably and ask me any question they want all day long. And when you're done, we're friends, and you will become a client of mine because you see that I'm passionate about this business.
Man, and you can tell. I mean, I've watched enough of your training, and and like you were talking about the Equity Assist program. I've watched a couple of webinars you did with your mortgage broker about that program. Yeah, that's a great program.
It's so cool, and I develop these programs to solve someone's problem, and that's what it's all about.
That's huge, man. I love it. I love it. Well, multifamilyinvestingacademy.com, right?
That's right. Yep. Or themultifamilyattorney.com. It takes you right to the Academy website. So it's all the same.
That's awesome, man. That's really good. Good stuff. I really appreciate you being on today. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Larry. It's when I got the call that you wanted to talk to me, I'm like, yeah, I'd love to talk to Larry.
That's awesome.
So cool.
That's good stuff, man. When you coming back to Charlotte?
I don't know yet. It's probably Deb is coming up. I love Deb is my assistant, and we're virtual. She's down in Florida. I'm up here in Massachusetts, and she actually used to live in this town. So she's coming up in August, and she and I are going to sit down and map out my next schedule. Next bunch of events. But I like to stay on the Eastern Seaboard. I'm doing an event in LA. Now the thing is that because my students have my phone number, they can call me anytime.
Right.
So far, all of my students have been on the East Coast in the same time zone. now I'm opening it up to a bunch of people in LA. I might regret this. I might regret, they're going to make me work 3 hours later, on the phone. And Larry, you know how I am. I only work 1 day a week, so 1 hour a week. So
Yeah.
I'm not
Well,
looking to do
set
that.
a rule. The people on the West Coast can't call you until afternoon.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'll give them 1 hour. I'll give them a 1 hour window.
There you go.
Yep. Perfect.
That's good, man. Well, thanks so much for being on. I really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Me too. Thanks, Larry. It's good talking with you.
Thanks a lot. You too.